theater was just a special place. And I was the guy who always stayed for the credits. What does an executive producer do? And now that I've been in the business for 60 years, I'm still not sure what an executive producer does, but I am one.
The Mamaroneck Movie Theater was one of my favorite places in the whole world.
I do connect going to the Mamaroneck Avenue Theater and just thinking like, maybe that's something I could do at some point.
I love the idea of creating illusions, because you watch a movie and you think they're there.
At every step, every immersion into a different facet of filmmaking and storytelling, I just kind of couldn't get enough.
How you can make an audience feel something. The shots and the visuals and the sound that I put up on the screen is making somebody think a different way.
So I love like storytelling, and then I love art, and it was like that was the perfect like medium to like put them together.
It's not just a form of entertainment, it's a way to connect with people, and I think that's kind of what really drew me in the first place.
You see a film just sometimes to get away from your head, to get out of yourself.
You know, the two great things about watching a film, on one level, you get a vicarious thrill. There's the element that you participate in the action, but the other one is you become a voyeur.
The lights are down, the film is on, you just get sucked into that screen and experience the magic of cinema.
I am not the first generation of people that chose to make this environment into a place where films and television can be made. There's a long and celebrated and illustrious history of television and film, happening here, in and around this community. I know, of course, that D.W. Griffith did turn and transform Flagler Drive into a studio.
And there's no doubt that, he is the father of film. He got very excited about acting, and he joined some kind of a theater group, and then he started to write plays. Somebody picked up on the idea that he had a talent for creating these scenes, and then he made his first film. It was a two-reeler, as they made in those days, very short films. He made 400 short films, but he was the first one to ever really stretch it beyond, an hour. He didn't always invent everything, but he made the things that were already invented, he brought them to fruition. He brought them to the level of artistic fulfillment. Parallel editing, might have been used in some of the early two-reelers that others made, but nobody used it the way he did. To get an audience so excited, to get them so ignited, jumping out of their seats. That was, the visceral effect of a Griffith scene. He created the way to make an action sequence. I mean, he knew how to do it, but he brought it to a level. I would say that, all of the directors of today, like Spielberg and Scorsese and all of those, they definitely, learned a lot from Griffith. Richard Brody of The New Yorker, I think he said, what makes Birth of a Nation so terrible is that it's so good. I read this wonderful piece that dealt with this man, William Walker. He was a young man, and he saw the film in a theater that only Negroes, and that was the word they used then, only Negroes attended. And he sat there and he said for the first 2 hours of the film, he just cried. And in the last third, he was so enraged that he wanted to go out and kill somebody. And that's what, that was, I could see that reaction. So I don't think that there's ever been another film that produced that much controversy.
When I was in high school, they showed a film, and it was called Birth of a Nation. And it was in celebration of D.W. Griffith's techniques for dramatizing action and bringing stories alive on the screen. So they played it in the auditorium. And I just looked at it as a film. I didn't really, it was like a good guy, bad guy story. But later on, I realized that's a terrible distortion of history. He made history with his film techniques and distorted history with his content. That whole movement to not talk about the unpleasant things, blah, 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 is insane. For one thing, on a positive level, how do we measure the progress we've made if we don't look at the past?
In some respects, because he was so dismayed by the vilification he received and the protest against Birth of a Nation, he felt like this wasn't honest, this wasn't true, that he wanted to justify the fact that he was a man who really believed in compassion and justice and tolerance. And that's why he made Intolerance.
Griffith is known for Birth of a Nation, which has not aged well, to say the least, and is kind of like a pariah of filmdom at this point, and rightly so. But if you watch, like, Intolerance is a really fascinating movie, and it's just this like insanely gigantic movie set in 4 different time periods with a story about Jesus and a story about the French Revolution and a story, set in the then present day, and a story set in like Mesopotamia, ancient times. So it's just this insanely ambitious movie that is like legitimately still like mind-blowing to this day, some of the shots and things that are on screen.
So one might ask, why would the biggest director in Hollywood, and for that matter the world, leave it all behind?
I think trying to start his own studio, that he was going to revolutionize all of that, that somehow he had the hope that he could make his own film, his own way, on his own terms, and that he wouldn't have to, capitulate to anybody. And that was the exciting thing for him.
To protect themselves from the studios, some of the biggest stars, Mary Pickford, D.W. Griffin, Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, they formed United Artists.
United Artists wanted to be this company that could really devote itself to art and independence, and that's what Griffith stood for. That's always the dream of a director, to be able to make a film without, having to please people who don't know that much about film. In 1919, Griffith came to Mamaroneck, which was really quite amazing. I think coming to Mamaroneck allowed that to happen. And I think Way Down East is a reflection that it did happen, because I think he made that film on his own terms, and I think and luckily that film was not only his own vision, but it was also successful. It made money, and it had one of the most exciting silent film sequences of all time. Even though that was not filmed in Mamaroneck, that was filmed up in White River Junction. And that's the ice flow scene. And in fact, for one day, he had to use a double, because Lillian Gish, she said her hand was getting, frostbitten all the time because it was in the water. The Mamaroneck experience was an attempt to really have a studio that was going to be devoted to the artistic integrity of the directors who worked for it.
So he came to Flagler Drive, which is an area of land called Satan's Toe, which juts out from Larchmont Harbor and Oriana Point, and it has about 60 acres. Built all of his studios by himself, and he was in complete control. He employed half of the village. He employed a lot of folks in the town of Mamaroneck, carpenters, chauffeurs, extras. It seemed like everybody in the community was involved in the studios. They had a chauffeur whose sole job was to drive the Gish sisters, Lillian and her sister, all around Mamaroneck, pick them up at the railroad station, drive them to the studio.
There's a whole number of stories involved in filmmaking, from Paul Revere's ride over the Sheldrake River, all right, and they couldn't get the horse that they had hired to jump the river. So what does he do? He goes up to Playland, finds a jumping horse that was, trained to jump over cars, hired that horse. They were filming a scene from one of his films. They hired the Mamaroneck Village Volunteer Fire Department. Spray water in the air with airplane fans to simulate rain and storms, which is, what? But especially in 1922.
He really ignited the industry. I mean, theaters were made, bigger and into these palaces because of the D.W. Griffith film. He made big films, and he wanted, they needed theaters that were big enough, to show them.
I had no idea that this was a place of the silent film era, because once I saw the program, which we have in the lobby displaying all the people that were here for opening night, it really gives you a real feel of this was like a film mecca for people to come and be here in this area.
He apparently was not a good businessman, and he constantly ran out of money. He had to sell the property. Mansion that he was in, that was Flagler's mansion that he lived in out there, burned down.
I've been told by my friend Ben Modell, who also went to Mamaroneck High School and who's a silent film music scoring specialist, that Mary Pickford lived blocks away from where I'm speaking to you right now, on One Beach Avenue, and had a pet goose as she was here on a project. I know that Larchmont was actually the name that was translated to a village in Los Angeles.
I got a place in Larchmont, LA, and I was like, oh, that's funny. I came from Larchmont, and now I live in Larchmont. And I had no idea it was because of the connection between the Mamaroneck, Larchmont, and what Larchmont had been with Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks and the sort of where the stars had their summer homes.
I think the industry has really built more of our hometown pride. Mamaroneck and Larchmont are so special and a big part of the success here in Westchester County. Having the beauty of the Long Island Sound, the different communities and commercial buildings attracts award-winning directors such as Steven Spielberg, who filmed scenes of his feature film, The Post, at Mamaroneck Motel. Productions can be here for 1, 2, 3 days or months, and they get to know our local small businesses and our areas. And many will come back and find home here in Westchester County.
Years and years ago, before my time, people in production bought houses, and Mamaroneck and Larchmont was convened around this growing collection of people from the industry.
Yeah, the proof's in the pudding. As you know, a lot of the industry professionals decided, even after they moved to Hollywood and New York City, that they want to come back here to Larchmont, Mamaroneck, because this is where they want to raise their family.
Growing up in Larchmont, Mamaroneck, it seemed freewheeling, but it was also inspiring. I felt I could accomplish things. I could do things. Nothing was prohibited. There was no level I couldn't get to, because I saw people around me in the world, world of the area, who were very successful and who had money and who had careers and who had life satisfaction. I thought I can do that too.
You hear a lot of stories about Hollywood successes who come from Mamaroneck. There's like David O. Russell and Joan Rivers and the Dillon brothers, and they paved the way a little bit. So you see it's possible.
As a community, it's literate. People take their children to see plays. People read plays. People read a lot of books. The community has a lot of enrichment.
Larchmont and Mamaroneck was home to lots of people who worked in the media. So I think awareness of and sensitivity to the image and sound were part of growing up in this community. And they also supported the arts. The people who voted for school district funds year after year supported the arts and television and media production. That was what made a big difference.
Mamaroneck was just a great town to go to school and just dream, I think. Just walking around was pretty inspirational, just because it felt like, you know, you could really accomplish anything if you put your mind to it in this environment that we grew up. It just seemed like whatever you really wanted to be, you could be.
And at the high school, there was this magical place called MHS-TV. I went on to NYU, and one of the reasons I got into NYU was because of my reel productions that I had done in high school. So I owe it all to Mamaroneck schools, where I learned how to do production and video, that I was able to go to NYU.
It's actually terrifying to think that school's curriculum decisions and a couple inspiring teachers set me on a path that otherwise I would have missed, and it makes me so happy and so gratified. Like, I think it is not an accident that this school produces so many storytellers, and we are cognizant of it and incredibly grateful. I still spend countless hours in the edit room, and I never questioned where that came from or why I even have an instinct for it, but I think it really came from there, and I'm certain that without Dr. DeGennaro, I don't think I would have pursued it in college. He kind of lit a specific spark in me that I've never been able to extinguish.
To hear that so many of my students have kind of really had some success, not only in film, but in the arts. Thank God Mamaroneck was not one of these Midwestern football schools, or where the drama club was met once a month. Here we had this great school with pace, and Mamaroneck was the perfect fit for me in so many ways.
Sophomore year is when I met Mr. Witch and started his video class, and that was like, if photography was the gateway drug, this was a full-on addiction. I think this is true of when someone hits like an oil mine of passion and is just looking to feed it more. And I think Mr. Witch, who was just an incredible mentor.
At the time, it didn't occur to me that I was going to turn out future professionals. I just wanted my students to be more smart about media and to understand how media can shape communication and shape their understanding of the world. The fact that many of them got the bug, so to speak, is wonderful. That there are careers and families that are involved in television and film production. I think that's wonderful. So it makes me feel great. It makes me feel that, well, that's my legacy.
I wasn't in LA. I had no connections to anyone who does this. I had no proximity to even the New York version of this world. So we're in a small local little pod. Like, what's the biggest venue for this? In a way, it was LMC-TV. And it's also, I think it's great to have a training ground that's not the Olympics on the, at the beginning. It's good to be able to sort of cut your teeth in a place where if you make a mistake, you're not going to get hung for it.
When I was younger, I had the desire to make, movies, but I didn't really see a path to like, how can I actually learn to do this stuff? And I think LMC was that path, and it was, there that I learned how to use a camera and how to shoot and how to edit. And I think when I went to college, I was like, miles ahead of the other people who I went with, because I had spent so much time hands-on doing this stuff and just out there in the field and kind of like, accumulating those hours of production at LMC.
I went into college knowing that I wanted to be in the film industry, and not to say like people in my college were like that, but I don't think that they had the discipline and the background that was able to be bestowed upon me because of LMC Media.
There have been so many projects, from Matt Dillon, who was in my high school year, my brother Bennett, who with his friend Danny Futterman created movies like Capote, growing out of the relationships that they fostered here in this community. It's a unique location, and these are just a few examples of how Larchmont and Mamaroneck have played an important formative role in what we now know today as the media and entertainment industries. When I went to junior high school in Homix, Charles Martin Fitch was there, and there was a TV program, and I paid attention to it. And when I went to Mamaroneck High School as a freshman and watched the King Kaiser show and MHS Info, that I saw students actually making television. This was a watershed moment for me, an epiphany that I could also do this. I think part of it was the accessibility that the schools, Homix and Mamaroneck High School, made these kinds of tools available to us. Partially because the cable television, companies at the time, UA Columbia Cablevision, who I worked with, actually invested in community access as a quid pro quo for being in the community. We were so far advanced that I don't even think like the colleges at the time were able to put up, adapt to that level of experience. I did go and work for David Letterman as an intern at NBC and fit right into the live television landscape. I went to work for MTV, graduating straight out of college, I had skill sets that truly prepared me for working, in that kind of an environment. And in 1989, I started my company, Empire Entertainment, and today we are almost 30 years old. We're a global event production company. We produce television, film, concerts, broadcasts, festivals, all kinds of things. And I truly attribute all of those foundational skills to what I learned at MHS and working here in the community.
Well, I fell in love with performing because I went to a school system that was funded heavily in the arts. There was a teacher there named Molly McCarthy, who happened to also be a neighbor, had a movie career of her own, and was taking a break to raise her kids, and then ended up becoming a real mother hen for a lot of us. But all the while, Molly was across the street, eager to help prepare an audition. She was very impactful in a lot of the lives of young actor wannabes. And I don't know if I would have become an actor if it hadn't been for this woman.
We were looking for people for Over the Edge. We found Matt Dillon in Homix and brought him in. He was terrific. And the producer really wanted Scott Baio, like they always do. And I worked with him for about a month and a half, and then I thought, if they don't give this kid this part, curtains. And they did give it to him.
Growing up in Mamaroneck and the wonderful athletic programs that we had, both in the school, outside of the school, kind of everywhere, I really was able to understand at a really young age what it took to be a part of a team. I think that there is a correlation between sports and acting, oddly. And for sure, that was in my childhood in Mamaroneck.
I hope everyone back in Mamaroneck knows both the teachers, how inspirational and informative and influential they've been to us, and how we've never forgotten them. And I hope all the kids realize how lucky they are to live in a community where there's the space for creativity and the focus on the arts that at least gives you the opportunity to decide whether it's for you or not.
Our school has been amazing with kind of giving us this creative outlet to express ourselves. I've had two amazing video teachers who have really just supported my creative endeavors and gave me the outlet that I need to be successful as a filmmaker. I definitely learned a lot more about the film industry and helping your community through LMC. They allowed me to get involved with not only film but my community and finding an ulterior purpose to making artwork.
Before I thought video was just something that would be just for fun. Being a director or something didn't seem like a job that would be available to me, or that I could even practice. By the end of the first year, I knew how to edit on a professional editing software, and I knew how to work a DSLR. By 10th grade, I knew that's what I wanted to do. My 9th grade and 10th grade video teacher, Ms. Dombroff, is definitely a huge mentor for me. I think if I didn't have her as a teacher, I don't know if I'd really be even into video. Having this specialized space specifically dedicated to filmmaking and movies and just everything, it really makes a difference. You're able to
you know, make these connections with people that you wouldn't have met otherwise. And you get to hear these new opinions that you never would have even thought of, or movies that you'd never even heard of. And I think that's part of why having like a video program in school is so important. It's just shaped me into the filmmaker that I am today.
When I was younger, my sister and I used to make videos every weekend, every time that we had just any free moment. We used to make films and skits, and she used to write these scripts for us, and we'd spend so much time outside and editing and filming, and it was so much fun. So I just thought, as this elective at the high school, I was so excited to continue that incredible experience. School has been such a great outlet and really helped me with pursuing filmmaking both now and for the future.
School has definitely shaped my interest for video and filmmaking in a way that it showed me that it could be more than just a hobby, but also a career. I think that also working at LMC really helped me understand that what I could do could be helping within the community and not just within my personal life. My goal is really to make films that have an impact and that connect with the audience in a way that they watch it and they now want to change something maybe in their life and do something better.
And with all the resources that we have here in Larchmont, that allowed me to soar as a filmmaker.
Because of the Larchmont-Mamaroneck media presence in our school system and the resources that existed in the form of LMC Media, I was able to find a career path, and it's made all the difference in the world in my life. And I'm hopeful that other people will recognize the value of this and make sure that this tradition can continue. And if we look back on 100+ years of movie making and television and the fostering and creation of the media and entertainment industries right here in Mamaroneck and Larchmont, I think that there's a tradition that's worth propagating and continuing here.